Hey, Kess here. Yes, you get to see my ugly mug, and this lighting doesn't make it really look any better. So anyway, welcome to my chess video series for beginners. I'm not that good. If we take a look at my stats, you'll see that I'm rated about 1200 or almost 1200 in Blitz and Rapid, and about 1350 for daily, so not great. I think I'm 65th percentile or 63rd percentile for blitz, and I think 70 some percentile for daily. So I'm no scrub per se, but I'm no grandmaster either. But that's not going to stop me from passing on some chess knowledge to you so that you can learn this beautiful game for yourself. And what makes chess beautiful is that if you win, it's not like there's no like teammates you got carried. There's no luck. It's just your pure, I guess, good gameplay that won you the game. So that makes the reward all the more better because you're not like, oh, I got carried by my teammate, or I got really lucky. It's the victory is all yours, and that really is a beautiful reward for playing chess. And chess is, as they say, the only form of art where it's being created as you play it, and I think it's a really beautiful game. So I'm here to pass on some chess knowledge to you in this, and I have 7 videos planned, and they're all going to be kind of short except for this one because I'm adding this intro, and they're all going to be kind of short. Try to keep them about like 10 or so minutes. I think this one will be longer, obviously, because it's intro. But I'm going to go into opening concept beginner. This one, tactic concept beginner, endgame concept beginner, and basic checkmates. And yes, I have this whiteboard that I have some notes on. Middle game concepts, and then advanced concepts of opening, tanks, and endgame. And obviously, these aren't going to be too advanced because I'm only 1350 in my highest time control. But oh, I did get second in a daily tournament. So there, I did get that. I am now qualified to make videos because I got second in a daily tournament out of 16 people, no less. So anyway, that's the plan. Now we're gonna go into the actual content here of chess, and I'm gonna assume that your chess knowledge is you know how the pieces work, you know how to castle, and you know it's to checkmate your opponent, and that's it. So we're gonna talk about how to draw. You can draw by agreement, so you can offer a draw, and if your opponent agrees, it's a draw. You can draw by threefold repetition, which is if you and your opponent repeat the same moves over 3 times, it's a draw. And the 50 move rule, which is if 50 moves have gone by without a pawn move or a capture, either player can claim a draw. And stalemate, which is if the opponent has no legal moves, for example, the only place they can move their king would be into like a check, and they can't move any other piece for whatever reason, then that is a draw if they're not currently already in check. So let's talk about some beginning opening concepts. Now, the opening, to be honest, is probably the least, and when you're a beginner, is the not the thing you should go ham on studying. But it's important to know these opening principles, which I've put up here. Let's get the finger right. I've put up here so that you can reference them as I talk through the video. And the reason you want to know these general opening principles is that if the rest of your chess will matter if you bungle the opening, and that's not a direction to study a whole bunch of opening theory, or to go into any of that. And we're going to have advanced opening concepts later that'll touch that a little bit, but just to know these general concepts so you can play them in your openings. So the opening principles are: develop your pieces, get your king to safety, control the center, connect your rooks. You don't want to really move the same piece twice, and don't make unnecessary pawn moves. So obviously there are exceptions to every rule, but these are the general opening principles that you should follow. And sorry about the board getting cut off at the top, but I'm going to show some example games, and names have been hidden to protect the innocent. So uh, let's kind of go through an example here of how I'm using these opening principles. So I usually play, actually we'll just go with this move, e4. The reason this is the most common opening move in all of chess, and the reason of that is, oh, and also just for some notation issues here, you have the letters down here on the bottom, which you can't really see because it's cut off. So A through H. and then you have the coming down the side is the rows. Each row is a number. So e4 is moving the pawn to the square e4. You don't preface pawn moves, but you'll say like knight to whatever. So the reason this is the most common move is it grabs control of the center, right? The pawn controls these two because they can capture on those two squares, right? And it frees up this bishop, so later we can develop it. And how it helps our king's safety is it frees up the bishop, so that gives us a path to castle. Now, a common reply is e5 here, just mirroring white. And again, does the same thing, frees up your bishop and controls the center. White usually plays knight to f3, and I'm not saying memorize these particular moves, but I just look at how they relate to the opening principles. So this comes with an attack on this pawn, as well as the knight controls these center squares and this square too. And you know, it gets a piece out of here so that we can castle. So we're getting our knight into the game, and we're letting ourselves castle here. Now, black sometimes replies knight to c6. This protects the pawn in the center, and even though it doesn't really help black castling any, it still brings a piece into the game. Your knight, like this knight back here, is pretty much useless. It can only control 3 squares, whereas this knight can control many more squares. Okay, I'm not going to go too much detail into that. And then white will sometimes play this move. This is called the Ruy Lopez. And now white's set to castle next turn. So if black brings another knight into the game, white can castle. And sometimes black takes this pawn, but this isn't always the best move because it's easily easy for white to get the pawn back, and then white can bring this rook into the game, and the knight has to move again. And black's moved the knight 3 times in the opening, which is not something you generally want to do. Even though black did gain a pawn, now there's a double attack on this pawn, and white can still push this pawn in the center. But anyway, that's a little diving into the theory, which I don't want to do. But you can see how moving this knight some extra times it didn't really help black all that much. Okay, you're up a pawn, but it's not that big a deal. White's getting some good counterplay here. So anyway, those are just the opening principles. Now, what connect the rooks means is that let's make some more moves here. Oops, it's white's turn to move. Oh, after we castle. Shoot. I hit the button too much. After we castle, let's say black instead plays this. Probably play something like this. Black castles. White plays this. Black plays this. White plays this. Black plays this. These are just random moves. And white plays this. Now, this is what I mean by connect the rooks. And it doesn't like this. The computer doesn't like this position all that much, but I was just playing random moves to show you connect the rooks means. There's nothing blocking the rooks, and these rooks are coordinated. And that's pretty important in the opening. It means that you've got all your pieces off the back rank. And sometimes you can leave your queen back there because your queen can move the same way as a rook, and your rooks cover each other. Because rooks on their own, especially with all these pieces still on the board, aren't all that strong, even though they're really strong in the endgame. So that's a very basic opening principles overview here, and I'm going to go through some examples. This is an example of when I was black. And here I kind of bungled the opening a little bit. And I ended up winning the game because my opponent made a blunder, but here I bungled the opening. So he opened with d4. This is another popular opening move. It frees up the queen, it frees up the bishop, it controls the center. It's pretty basic stuff there. I moved knight to f6, and part of the reason you play this is because I don't want him playing this and getting all these squares, like my knight can just take this pawn. So I want to discourage that. So he moved his knight. I did this. This is called, my plan was to fianchetto my bishop. This is putting your bishop here so your bishop controls the center from far away. However, these structures aren't the easiest to play, and I allowed him to push his pawn because if I take, he takes back. So now he's got this monster center. I got this pawn doing who knows what. And so I moved to try to challenge his center, but he just moves his pawn. Now I have to move my knight back. So here he's got a substantial advantage. The computer says he's up a pawn and a half, but he really hasn't taken any pieces, but he's up a pawn and a half because I bungled this opening. He followed the principles, and I didn't. I moved this knight twice, so I basically lost a move of getting another piece out because I moved the knight twice. He has full control of the center, and even though, yes, I control the light squares here, he can still try to undermine that really easily by taking with this knight, so I have to spend another turn defending this pawn. Is that actually what it is what he does? Okay, so he takes the pawn, and now I have no control of the center. He has all the control over the center, and I have no pieces out. And this knight's like, I mean, it's technically out, but it really is doing nothing. And the places it can go to are covered by his pawn, like that. I guess this square is safe, but his knight could take, but then I would just take it. So I don't know if he would give that up, but this is not a favorable position that I created for myself because I didn't follow the opening principles. I tried to get fancy. I tried to do this fianchetto maneuver, and that's not to say don't ever do a fianchetto maneuver, but you just have to be careful and follow the opening principles. And here I didn't, and it allowed me to be down in this game. So let's go through another opening here. Oh shoot, this is not an opening. We'll come back to this. Let's go through another opening here. This is a pretty standard opening called the Slav defense, but I opened with d4. We talked about that's good. And then my opponent plays d5, so he's controlling the center, getting pieces out. Pretty normal. I played c4, and the reason for this move is it doesn't get a piece out, but what it does is it contests the center and challenges his pawn, and so we're like trying to control the center, and at the expense of maybe not getting a piece out this turn. But it does allow like move my queen up here, move my queen out here. So I guess it does kind of give my queen some more movement options. But he plays this. It's not really a good idea to take this pawn, but because you can fall into some traps. But oh shoot, and it like skipped to the end of the game for some reason. Anyway, so he defends his pawn, and so there's a couple different ways on to defend it, but this basically, he defended it this way and not this way, because with that, he frees up this diagonal for his bishop. So, so even though he didn't really get a piece out with that pawn, he kept the diagonal open for his bishop to go wherever it wants in the future. And I moved a knight out, he moved a knight out, so we're just getting some pieces out. He moved this bishop, and I don't like this bishop maneuver here. And the reason I don't like it is because there's better spots it can go to, because this pawn's already sufficiently protected. And it blocks this pawn from going through. And how else are you going to get this bishop out? He could fianchetto it by, what do I play? I play that. He could fianchetto it by playing this and then playing his bishop here and then castling. But he does not do that. He opts to go for this move, which is a mistake. And it's a mistake because he's already moved that knight once. And the knight wasn't under attack. There wasn't any reason to move it. It couldn't really go and attack anything else. But it just moved again, and now it blocks this knight from coming in. So you can see how I have a substantial advantage. You can see the analysis ticker here. The white has a substantial advantage, and I didn't take any pieces. All I did was follow the opening principles. I controlled the center. I got my pieces out, and my opponent made a few mistakes, blocking this pawn and moving this knight twice. Just allowed me to get just that advantage over the opening. And I didn't go like memorize a whole bunch of theory in order to get this advantage, right? I memorized these first 4 moves, and that's it. And we'll talk about learning openings, memorizing moves in the advanced concepts video for openings. But generally, you don't, especially when you start it, you don't want to just memorize a bunch of moves. You want to understand why you do them, and that's why I'm just kind of breezing through these moves and only pointing out like the principles, because you don't want to be like, it was like, oh, this opening looks good, like, let me memorize it. Because if your opponent plays a move different than what you memorize, you're going to get confused, and you might just squander your advantage just because your opponent played something weird. Whereas you followed the opening principles up here, you can get an advantage no matter what they play. So just stick to those principles. So anyway, we make some trades. He attacks a piece. I have to move my bishop back because he attacked it. This is like the one time it's okay to move this another piece twice because I was going to lose my bishop otherwise. And then we play some more moves, and I didn't like this move. He should have just put it here because it can be protected by the king. And it's a little out, but we're going to talk about that stuff in another video. So that's basically all I had to say about the opening. This is going on 16 minutes, so a bit of a longer video, but I hope you found it informative. And we're going to talk, so this is just general opening principles. We're going to talk more about specific openings, how you should go about learning them in the advanced opening concepts video. I want to talk about one last thing, and it's called en passant. What en passant is I was playing this game, and this is a perfect example of it. So my pawn right now controls these two squares, right? If he moves this pawn up 1, I can just take it. So he moved it up 2. So now I can't take it. But the rule of en passant means I can take it. If I move my pawn as if it moved 1, I can take his pawn and land in the square it would have gone as if it moved 1. That's called en passant. It's French for in passing. I take his pawn in passing as it moves 2. So, but here's the thing, like if I play another move, such as just getting my bishop out, and then he plays another move, obviously it didn't like that move, but, because my knight's under attack. But like, let's say for a second my knight's not under attack, or you know what, that's kind of a stupid example. So let's say I say, oh, my knight's under attack, let me just move my knight away. And then he gets his bishop out or something like that. I can't go back and take this pawn. I have to en passant on the same turn that he plays his move, or he plays that pawn move. It won't let me. But the reason I was able to do it in the game is because I did play it immediately. So anyway, that's en passant for you. So I hope you enjoyed this video on kind of the introduction to this video series I'm doing and the opening principles. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments or any other way to contact me. And I will see you in the next one.